I'm so sorry. It's it's always a fun time to not look like a hot mess on a morning call.
Yeah, well, I was wondering, like, why are you so okay with 5 a.m.? Because right now it's 3 p.m. my time. So why, what are you doing up at 5?
I'm an early bird. I like to, wake up and get your stuff ready. I have to be at work at like 7:45, 7:30. So if I wake up a little bit early, I get stuff done.
Right. Because, I know that I wouldn't do it at 5 a.m. myself. So, Kat, what do you do? Is Kat okay, or should I say Catalina?
Cat's fine.
Kat's fine. Okay. Kat, what do you do for a living?
So I'm a captain in the United States Marine Corps. I'm a logistics officer.
Uh,
Um, I move things, people. Um, I do the feeding. Let's see, ammunition. Like very, very what you would think of. I think logistics in the military.
Yeah, I had no idea you were a captain. So just a little backstory for the people listening. I've known Kat since like high school or middle school. I have very good memory. We had humanities together. But I was really quiet in high school. Like I was pretty antisocial, so we didn't really talk much. But yeah, I saw your Instagram post. I saw you in uniform. I had no idea you were a captain. So tell us your story. All right, so you were born in New York.
No, so I was born in Colombia.
Oh, you're born in Colombia. So tell us your story.
Yeah, so I was born in Colombia. Um, my mom and I came to the US. Um, she had, begun a relationship with my stepdad when it was 1998.
Uh-huh.
I was 9. We moved to New York. We lived in Astoria for a couple of years
Story.
until they had, I'm so sorry. That's my dog.
Oh, I didn't
Um,
even hear him.
oh, okay. He's looking at himself in the mirror and growling.
He's hungry.
Um, and so we moved to Astoria. Then a couple of years later, they had my little sister Natalie, and they moved us to Bayshore, which is where I spent the rest of my time until I went to SUNY Stony Brook for a semester. Until honestly, it felt like until I could kind of get my mom's head wrapped around me joining the military. When it first happened, she was very against it. And I was like, okay, never mind. I'll go to school. Uh, but you could never shake it off, especially because the Iraq War was happening.
Uh,
So, so I joined the Marine Corps in 2008, went to boot camp in March, and I've been there ever since. In the Marine Corps, there's a program called MECEP, Marine Commissioning Program. It's basically what it is. It's an enlisted to officer program. And so I applied in 2014.
wow.
Yeah, went to OCS in 2015, and then they basically send you to school. So I commissioned, and here I am.
So how did you end up in Japan?
So that's one of the duty stations. There's a huge footprint of Marines mostly, but there's sailors and there's some soldiers here in Okinawa.
So are,
It's a
are you there temporarily? Like, what's the plan?
Yeah, I'm here for 3 years. It's
Oh, okay.
station. Yeah. It's a tiny little town. It's a tiny little island in they're called the Ryukyu Islands
Uh,
of Japan. Um, it's hot, it's humid. Not right now. Right now it's actually pretty cool. But
and
um
I'm willing to bet that you learned a lot of Japanese while you're there, the language.
uh it's like I could probably count the amount of words that I
Right,
know on these two hands.
right, right.
No, I wish I knew more, but I don't encounter uh the Japanese as much as you would think that if I, moved to another country for non-military work. Most of my day is on a base with a whole bunch of Americans. So,
Gotcha. So I guess you don't necessarily have to. So I've never been to Japan. Tell us what it's like in Japan versus America. Tell us the differences.
Um, the biggest difference that I've noticed here in Okinawa is the safety. When I drive to work, I have a cute little road by the ocean that I drive by, and there's little baby kids with the backpack that is half of them walking by themselves.
Wow.
They just go everywhere by themselves. They'll have little yen and buy food at Lawson's. So it's very safe. Um, another, everything's very clean. Everything's also very small. Houses, bathrooms, cars, everything is very, very tiny, very small. Um, but it's beautiful. They're very nice. They're very kind and um, respectful people. There's a lot of bowing involved.
Yes, yes. So my understanding of Japan is that it's very, very, it's a very respect-oriented culture. It's very, very respectful. You know, the people, like you said, bow to each other and say hello to each other. And like you said, it's very clean. And also technologically, you know, they have the bullet trains, they have all that. So I think Japan is like number one or two in technology in the world. I'm pretty sure they're ahead of America in many ways. My brother went to Japan a few months last year and he told me that what one thing they do is after the movie they stay and sit for the credits to respect the actors and to respect the directors. Is that true?
Yeah. Yeah, you stay for everything. You stay for it all. So I so there's one train. So like I said, Okinawa is very small. When I go to mainland Japan, um, it's it's almost like a whole other country. So Okinawa is a little bit so because it's so small, like we don't have a train going up to it's one long island and the top half of it is not as inhabited as the bottom half. I don't know if you're like a World War II guru, but during the Battle of Okinawa, in 1945, the bottom half of Okinawa held two-thirds, I believe, of the inhabitants.
Oh
So
wow.
is very mountainous. The terrain is very rough. So the train starts very south and then only really goes up until Naha, and Naha is 45 minutes from where I live. So it's still like very small. I hear one of my friends, she was here back in 2013, and she said she moved back and she was like, nothing has changed in Okinawa. Everything's the same. So I don't know that Okinawa is very typical of what Japan would be, but the cultural piece, yes.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like an amazing culture to me. Sometimes I'm thinking ahead, like even though I'm only 34, sometimes I'm already thinking ahead, like where do I want to retire? And Japan is one of those countries that, you never know. I might retire there one day. So let's talk about the military for a little, because my cousin is an ex-Marine. He did 6 years, and he was my last podcast. So that was really, really interesting. We talked a lot about the Marines and the military. So let's start from the beginning. What inspired you to join the military?
Do you remember back, when you and we were in high school and it was the times of like the Iraq War and Al Qaeda, I believe, captured a soldier, or I think it was two of them. I vaguely remember just people on their knees, and I'm so sorry if this is too gory for your
No, no,
podcast.
you could say whatever you want.
But they were beheaded online. They were beheaded, recorded, and then posted on YouTube. I think that was it. That's what hooked me. So I decided that I was gonna join the Navy because that's the only branch of the service besides the Army that I knew. That's it. I only knew of the Army and the Navy, and I was like, okay, well, I'll join the Navy. I kind of like boats. Um, and I went to go into the recruiting office, and like I said, my mom was not about it, so I had to wait for a little bit. But yeah, I think that's really what drove me. Um, what drove me at the beginning.
So you said at the beginning. So what about later on?
Well, every 4 years you have to re-enlist. So I think what kept me in was, the people are awesome. You take people from basically every part of not even just the United States, because there's a lot of us immigrants in the military from basically the whole world, and you put them into the Marine Corps. It's fantastic. It's awesome. So every 4 years, I was like, well, I kind of really like this. And 17 years later.
Okay, so I'm a little confused because you said Marine, but you also said Navy. Those are two different branches, right?
Oh yes. So the Marine Corps, the Department of the Navy. I did not know what the Marine Corps was, and but when I heard about the Marine Corps and how it's supposed to be like one of the hardest branches to get into, that was it. I was like, okay, well, I'm gonna go try.
You like challenges.
A little bit, yes.
Yeah, so it sounds like in the very beginning, your motivations were more altruistic and your motivations were more about saving others rather than any, sort of financial benefits or anything like that. Is that right?
Uh, yes. And then it was about the Marines themselves, and not really. You have to leave when you're ready to leave. Otherwise, you'll come back. Out of three or four Marines um, that have EAS that I know, just from the last couple of years, um, a lot of them want to come back. A lot of them want to go see what the world is about.
Yep.
But they come back, they miss it.
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine that there's a tremendous amount of camaraderie in the military, and sometimes it's hard to find that camaraderie out in the real world, so I'm sure that that's a huge part of it. So tell us what it's like, because the military is probably like at least 90% men, right? Tell us what it's like to be a female, especially a captain in the military.
Um, so my experience, I don't think is typical because I have not experienced a lot of the discrimination that I hear on social media, on, in the media. Uh, when I first came into the Marine Corps, I went into a very female, heavily populated MOS, operational uh, skill,
Uh,
military operation skill. Um, oh my gosh, if that's not what it is, I'm going to be so embarrassed.
I can
Operational
always
skill.
cut this part out.
Yes, I think that's what it is. I was administration.
Uh,
So the amount of women that are there is super high. I don't know if it's because that draws women in or because when you take the ASVAB, the test that you have to take before you join the Marine Corps, there's a clerical part. So, if you score really high on the clerical part, maybe that's where they put you. I'm not really sure, but I had a ton of female Marines around me, and the men that were in the in that MOS also, were around a lot of women. So it's not, so it wasn't awkward for them. So I don't have difficult times. The people were great. The only thing that really hurt was my body. My body hurts. I'm not the typical size of a man. I'm, a woman. I'm 5'3 3/4. So the the training hurt a little bit, and then going into officer training, it's a little bit harder. The packet's a little bit heavier, the hike's a little bit longer. So I think that's really the part that is most difficult, was the physical part not being, and I was a little bit older, when I went through TBS, which is a basic school after you commission. Most of the officers in my class, were in their early 20s, and I was in my early 30s. So, um, It was a little bit challenging.
Wait, because you already you had training when you were very, very young. So what is this other part that you're referring to right now?
When you commission, when you become an officer. So I was an enlisted Marine, and during that training, I was young. I joined the Marine Corps when I was 19. But then when you commission, you have to go through a whole other pipeline of training, which is like officer training. It's
Oh,
very similar to enlisted training. So you have to go through boot camp as an enlisted Marine. You have to go through officer candidate school as an officer. And in my experience, going through boot camp was very mentally challenging, because there's no off button. They're yelling at you, from the minute you wake up to the minute you go to sleep. There's no autonomy to do anything. They tell you when to eat, how fast to eat, I mean, everything. Officer candidate training is, I mean, you're briefing, you're briefing orders, but the physical challenge is much higher. I mean, they don't care about your sleep. They want to make sure that you can operate under pressure. Uh, so I did that when I was 26, and then went to school. I was in school for 3 years, and then once you commission as a second lieutenant, you go to the basic school, which is very similar to like MCT or Marine Combat Training for enlisted Marines, except it's 6 months long.
wow.
And it's that's you hike a lot, you do a lot of the usual things that officers are just now learning, um as they're brand new Marines themselves. I just wasn't a brand new Marine.
So, you've been in the military for some years now, so there has to be some moments where you just like, I don't want to do this anymore. I want to go home. I want to pack it up. Have you had a lot of those moments?
No.
No, not at all, not even one.
um let's see.
You're allowed to say no, that's fine.
Yeah, I think during very difficult times, the work, it may be like, man, I don't want to do this work anymore. I don't know that I don't want to be a Marine anymore. Um, because during those really difficult times, it's other Marines that you're gonna turn to. I think there's there's a lot of challenging parts. I mean, mostly, when you're hurt, when you're broken, when you're in training, and you just like your body's like, hey girl, like this is as fast as I can go, as fast as I can go, and people are going, 3 times as fast as you can. I think those times are really challenging, and you really start to question even if you belong there. But um yeah, but not I don't want to do this Marine thing anymore. Um,
Yeah, I mean, it sounds to me like you're really emotionally attached to the military, like you just over time fell in love with it, which is amazing because now that means you found your thing. It sounds like the military is your passion. Is that correct?
I think so. I think
For
so.
that, Joy.
Like I said, I think it's the people, because they move around, you move around your job. You can't fall in love with your job because you're going to be doing something else very soon. Like very soon I'm going to go do something else. Actually, in 2 weeks I'm moving to another job. But it's the people. It's pretty freaking fantastic.
Yeah, and you met your husband through the military.
My fiance, yes.
Yeah, so sorry, your fiance. Okay. So it sounds to me like overall you come across as a very, very confident person. Is that safe to say?
Yeah, I would say so.
I'm just wondering, like, because the military, when people go in, they often don't come home the same, even if it's like better. Like sometimes people come home better, sometimes people come home with PTSD. So, my question to you, I guess, is how has the military affected you mentally, or even like your confidence? How has it affected you mentally?
Um, I think going through really tough times, kind of builds that grit in your brain. And I don't know if it's the personal circumstances. I don't know if it's the Marine Corps because they all medal now. It's just me now. Um, but um, things that I see challenging others don't necessarily challenge me. And I mean, it can be a plethora of things, right? It doesn't even have to be the Marine Corps. It can just be that I'm a really happy person and I am, that's usually what people describe me. They'll be like, "Oh yeah, Captain E, yep, she's bubbly, she's happy, like good luck, giving her a bad day." It doesn't happen. But again, I don't know, is it just me? Is it the military? I've had a lot of hard things to go through just in my personal life. Like maybe that's it. I don't know. Um, but I think it's contributed to grit, doing really hard times, really, really hard things, really hard physical things. I think it changes your brain. And I think I read a study about that it actually does change your brain. Um, so, um, yeah, so it really hard things, putting your mind through really hard things. I think it's a really good thing to do.
Yeah, it sounds like the military made you not only physically stronger, but mentally and emotionally stronger. One huge part of building confidence and of getting mentally stronger is, overcoming challenging things. And there's nothing really more challenging than the boot camp as a Marine. You pretty much went through pretty much the most challenging thing on earth, and you passed it. So I would imagine that raised your confidence and raised your, view on yourself some.
Yeah. So I tell this story all the time because I think I think my mom had a lot to do with this. So when I first joined the Marine Corps, I did not know that women were not allowed in combat. That wasn't something that I knew. Shows you
Wait,
how,
still today?
no, 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 not anymore.
Oh, they changed it. Okay.
But when I first joined the Marine Corps, that wasn't a thing that you could do. And, it shows you how little I knew about the military, but I didn't know that. But my mom always, and she's probably the person that gave me my confidence to this day, even, even though she's gone, it was always, "Oh, mamita, you can do it. You can do it. You're strong. Look how strong you are. You're the strongest person." I mean, like, talk about a hype woman. Like, "Oh, you're the most beautiful, most talented, most intelligent person in the world." Like, what do you mean, So, I think it was her. So I think she's the person that gave me my confidence, and it just never went away. So when I joined, when I wanted to join the military and I went into the Marine Corps, when I saw those videos of people doing really difficult things, I don't know that I questioned it. My mind was just like, "Oh, I could do it. I'm strong. I like, is it going to be hard? Absolutely." That's what I want to do. Like,
Yeah.
yes.
And this is proof that the way that you're raised and what you're told as a child changes everything. Because if you had a mom that was less encouraging, if you had a mom that was, let's just say, condescending and told you that you couldn't do it and that you're weak, because my ex was her mom was actually like that. Her mom was very, very condescending towards her. And if you had a mom like that, you probably wouldn't have even joined the military. You probably would have even thought, oh, I can't do that shit. You know what I'm saying?
No. I really probably wouldn't have, because that, like, when you see videos, that's very difficult. Even to very capable people. My little brother, he's my little half brother. He's also in the Marine Corps. And I remember when I first started talking to him about it, I would, he wanted to join the Coast Guard. I started talking to him about the Marine Corps, and he was like, "Oh, it just seems really hard." What do you mean? I did it. And he's physically, leaps and bounds. He's younger, he's very in shape, he's been going to the gym for years, he's so much taller than me. So he has a physical advantage over me, but here he was going, "Oh, I think it's hard." What do you mean? Of course it's hard. Who cares? But he made it. He's doing fantastic. So
So where is he now?
he's in South Carolina.
Oh,
Yeah.
nice. Is he part of the what is he part of?
He is with a squadron down in Beaufort. And he's an administrator. That's what I was when I first came into the Marine Corps. He's
Nice.
really good.
Yeah, I noticed that military often runs in the family. So before I don't want to brush this over. You mentioned that you had hard times in your personal life. Now I don't know how private you are. I don't know what you want to talk about. Whatever you're comfortable talking about, you can share. Whatever you're not, you don't have to share at all. But what hard times did you have in your personal life?
Um, so I'll go through I think probably the two hardest things while I've been in the Marine Corps. Because uh, I came to the US with my mom because my dad had passed away when
Oh,
I was 8, but uh, I was 8, so I remember very little of it. So I remember my dad bits and pieces, but I don't really remember what it felt like. Um, so I can't speak on baby Catalina. Um, but so I was married. I got married very young in my Marine Corps career, and 4.5 years later, and this is I'm we're him and I are we're on good terms now because it's been a long, long time. But 4.5 years later, he left me. He left me for another woman, and I
oh,
think that was like it was devastating. It
yeah.
physically, mentally, emotionally devastated me. So that was the first thing, and then and my mom passing away.
Oh,
She so she died by suicide. I know that a lot of my family doesn't like to talk about it, but I think it needs to be put out there because you need to be approachable to people that are having issues, especially in the military. Um, because they need to know that you understand them and that you're not just, gonna um, maybe view them as weaker or,
mhm.
but yeah, those were the two things that I think were the most difficult and the most challenging, uh, not physically, because physical challenges are so much easier than emotional challenges. But yeah, and and that's okay. You get over them, but I think it gives you like a baseline of like concrete grit, something that like just makes you stronger. To build upon when you come upon more difficult things.
Yeah, that's terrible, Kat. I mean, to me, it sounds like you've had a really rough past, and I could definitely imagine boot camp being easier than dealing with a horrible divorce or your mom, committing suicide. I mean, these are such terrible things, and I love my mom to death, and I don't, I have no idea how I would cope with that, So how do you cope with that?
Um, so at first, my brother and sister were very small. Um, so at the beginning, it was asking God to please take their pain and give it to me. It was a lot of waking up and being like, all right, God, like, don't let them hurt. Like, give me their pain. I'm a, I'm a grown woman. I was 21. I'm a grown woman. Like, please give me their pain. So it was, I don't know that at the beginning I coped with it more than just, all right, you know, this has to be done. Let's plan, for her funeral. Are the kids doing okay? Like, let's get this done and ready. Um, and then I don't think I coped with it very well. It was a lot of, okay, put your face on for work and then go to work, be okay, and then come back and kind of just disassociate. Um, After my mom passed away, my ex-husband also deployed. So I was by myself, kind of like dealing through that. Um, it was a lot of like, all right, we're not gonna think about this. This is just what happened and we're gonna be done. Because at 21, you don't really understand. all the intricacies of what happened. You don't understand the intricacies of, somebody with, with a mental illness. Like you just don't understand. You just know that this happened and then you just have to deal with it. So I think, yeah, so there was a lot of dissociation. And then as you get older, you're like, okay, like this is something that you have to really process. So I started talking about her more, started reading um, about postpartum depression, about depression itself. And then I don't know how religious I can get, but like that baby Jesus, like I wouldn't be here if, it wasn't for him. So you just pray.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure praying helps, you know. And by the way, you can say whatever you want in this podcast. You don't have to worry about any like sort of filtering. You don't have to worry about that because this is a mental health podcast, and you could say there's no filter here. But what before when you were explaining when I asked you how you cope with it, I noticed a lot of like solution based and external uh answers. So like, making sure that no one is hurting and going to work and then coming back and then maybe some suppressing. And I noticed a lot of like solution based answers based on the external world rather than internal processing and focusing on your internal world. And it sounds like when you got a little bit older you started to process more. Did you see a therapist?
No, no. I think I think it happened very naturally. It happened very uh it was like it was like self expulsion of what was happening. I think once it stopped hurting, right? Because like when it first happened, the first month or so, it was very much, okay, are the things that need to get done? Yep. And then when you think about it, when I thought about my mom, it was very painful. Like it hurt me. So then you don't think about her because it hurts. So it was, okay, come home. I had um my two dogs and my cat at the time. I was like, okay, do the things for the dogs. And then during that time, I loved the Food Network channel. And I would watch TV for like an hour or so. And then it was time to go to sleep and go to work. So you try not to think about it because it physically hurts. But I think once I could think about her and not physically hurt, that's when you're like, what happened? Like, it took probably 2 years for that to happen. Um, and it happened concurrently with my ex-husband leaving me. So I don't know if it was a coincidence, but everything kind of happened together. And then I kind of went through, kind of getting over everything period. And that's when I grew up Catholic. So it like God has always been in my life. But as an adult, until that time, I wasn't consciously seeking him. That's when I started. Like after my divorce, everything kind of like whew, poured out. I started seeking him, and just it helps you. It gets it all out. It's like an expellant of bad emotions.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it takes a higher power to take out, to help us heal because, you can do like all the drugs in the world and all the alcohol in the world, but those things won't really truly help for more than an hour or so, and it's a really sad situation because now I have a fear that your brain started to learn, well, every time I love someone, they just leave me. I love my mom. My mom was hero. She left. I loved my ex. He left. So now I have a fear that, your brain is starting to learn that at a pretty young age that, if I love people, they're just gonna leave me.
It's funny that you bring this out because that's one of the things that I had to work with my fiance. Um Oh man, how long how long do you have for this
I got a
podcast?
long, the question is how long do you have? I have all day,
Um,
all day.
so so he's he always wants to learn, he always wants to know the why, and he's a very uh he loves very hard. Let's just put it at that. And that wasn't something that I was used to, because most of my relationships have been apart, because the military has made it very difficult for me to be with my partner co-located. Um, and so when him and I first started seeing each other, I don't remember him saying this, but he now says that, like, there was a very strong wall where, like, this is how close I am willing to get to you, but that's it. Um, so that is something that we had to work through because I did not know it. That wasn't in my self-seeking, self-discovery. I just didn't know. And you don't know what you don't know. I didn't know, that I kept people at a distance. I didn't know that. But he noticed it, and it was like, hey, this is happening. And I was like, no, it's not. uh no, like, we're fine, the way that we are. And a few months in, I started doing a lot of reading, a lot of, I don't know if any of the listeners want a really good book for couples. It's called Attached. Kind of talks about your attachment styles. Such a good book. So did a lot of reading, did a lot of podcasting. um And yeah, so yes, that is one of the things that happened that I didn't even know happened. But, you know, just from talking to you, you figured it out in 30 minutes and he figured out it in a couple of months.
I thought I was your first podcast. I felt special for a little bit.
Listen to podcasts. Yeah, yeah. Oh
Oh,
no.
okay,
Yeah.
okay.
This is the first podcast I've ever been on.
Well, that's good because people a lot, you have to understand a lot of people are in the same situation. A lot of people are getting divorced. A lot suicide rate is very, very high right now. I'm starting to tear right now, but a lot of people are in the same situation. So, it's really, really good for them to hear your story and to see that you're still surviving and you're still smiling and you're still successful. So and your fiance sounds like a really good guy.
He is. He really is. And I'm very grateful for him because he wants to get to as close and as deep of a relationship as he can. And I had never, I'm about to be 36 and I had never felt that in my life. Um, so it's a very it's a very secure feeling. It's a very protective feeling, and it's wonderful. It's
Yeah,
wonderful.
I mean, it sounds to me like, you know, it because I've dealt with women who put up walls too. My ex was like that. She put up a very, very high wall. And it takes a certain type of man to help her put the walls down. It takes a man who's very, very patient, very psychologically aware, very understanding. And it takes a certain type of man. And I'm really glad that you put the wall down, because that some people leave that wall up for life. I know people in the 60s, 70s, 80s who are still putting walls up and who are very, very distant. And I'm really proud of you for overcoming that because I it, it's re- it, when you're the people that you love the most leave you, obviously you're gonna put up walls. Like who wouldn't? Like you can't blame yourself for that. You can't. It was just a phase. It was a phase, but you can't blame yourself for that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it was, hindsight is always 2020. But I can see during that time, in not just romantic relationships, just friendship, like, I kept them at such a distance. And I wasn't like that before, and so I started thinking, I'm like, what is it? Oh my gosh, he's right. And then I read the book. Then, as they describe the different attachment styles, like, holy moly, oh, this is me. Oh no, and now you're like, I put you through this. Like, how do I fix it? Like, how do I make sure that this doesn't happen? Um, and especially in a romantic relationship, where you're looking for marriage, where you want to have, that I'm gonna I have to say it, but like, God created marriage to be this, like, it's gonna be at the top level of all of your connections, of all of your relationships. And he doesn't make things that fail, but you have to do it the way that he says you have to do it. You have to put each other first. You have to really, you know, you have to do what he says. You have to live by his rules, and then it doesn't fail. So, but you can't do that if you're putting walls up. You can't do that if you're always so about yourself. You have to, just you just have to do it the way that you're supposed to do. And living in a like a citadel is not going to work. So, um, yeah, it's night and day. It's been fantastic.
Yeah, you have to allow yourself to love, and it's really tough when, obviously when the people you love are leaving you one way or another. Obviously, it's going to be hard to let yourself love because your heart is saying, well, why should I let myself love if it's just going to lead to suffering? Eventually they're going to die, no matter whether you get met. It's either, there was a divorce lawyer I was hearing on YouTube the other day. He was saying every marriage ends. It either ends in divorce or it either ends in death. Every marriage ends. So then the heart, after a while, it starts to say, why am I allowing myself to fall in love if it's just gonna end one way or another? Because it will end one way or another. And it's funny you mentioned attachment styles because I was just reading about them the other day, and the word that came to my mind was avoidance.
Yes. Yep. I was the by the book avoidant attachment style. It was really difficult. And I think now to this day, I'm like, how did this man keep up with this? Because it was a few months before we figured that out. It was a few months of like, wait, like, what's happening? I thought everything was going great and you're kind of pushing me away now. So yeah, so it was a few months before we kind of figured it out. And it was difficult to go through, especially because we're both in our 30s, and we're like what is going on? We're not teenagers. Like, why can't we figure this out? And through some very intentional, like, seeking and kind of reflection to see what it is that's happening, man. But when it happens, it's so good. It's so good.
So how did you start to put your walls down? Like, did you start like forcing it? Like, walk us through the process of how you got to the point where you put your walls down.
So I read the book. It's called Attached. I don't remember who it's by. But as I'm listening to it, I live by the beach. So Okinawa is all it's just the beach. And I was walking by the beach. I was listening to the book, and I started noticing that a lot of hey, if you kind of, do this, and the book gives you a lot of scenarios where you're like, oh, I think that this is kind of what I'm doing. And then it gives you little tips and tricks to try to kind of get out of it. But a lot of it, they said that if you're a very hard, you know, avoidant, that you might need some help, some therapist, maybe go talk to somebody else. And I was like, okay, well, let's see how this works. And a lot of the things that it said was being aware that this is your attachment style, and doing the things that you so for example, um very deep conversations were very uncomfortable to me because it leaves you very vulnerable. um we started doing a lot of those, and once you get one done, it's like, oh, this feels nice. Then you do another one, and then you're like, wait, I want to share more with you. This makes me feel great. I want to be open. But he also had like a huge play in it, because he knew this was my attachment style, and he knew the things that I had gone through. So the more we talked and the more we went through um kind of like my struggles and the things that were very difficult for me. We talked a lot about how I felt after, after um my ex-husband left me. And then we started focusing more on relationships. There is a podcast called Marriage Now, I believe. It's a podcast with their names are Jimmy and Karen. I think it's Marriage Now, and they talk about marriage and how to put each other first, how to uh, you know live in a live in a marriage that is guaranteed to work. And a lot of those relationship tips and tricks we started doing. And I think it just kind of fell together. Um, yeah, and still listen to them to this day. And it's been awesome.
Yeah, so it sounds like the book and podcast and listening to other people helped a lot, which is actually one reason why I started this podcast. Because, I listen to podcasts myself and I understand that they can help a lot, especially when the person that you're listening to is going through something or went through something that you went through. They can really, really help a lot. They can make you feel less lonely. And, it sounds to me like you've dealt with a large amount of loneliness in your life.
Yeah, the unfortunately the Marine Corps can um, there's a new kind of law in place now that if you and your spouse are going to be stationed far apart or outside of the local area, which is about 50 miles, that it has to have general officer endorsement now, but that wasn't the case, for the last, 17 years. So yes, unfortunately, I spent a lot of time away from, from my significant others. So yeah, so it's difficult. That I think maybe that's why I cling on to Marines so much, because that's kind of all you have. I'm far away from home. I'm far away from my family, far away from my significant other. And then, all you have is your Marines. So,
Yeah, and now it makes more sense why you love the military because I think it gives you that feeling of like camaraderie and that feeling of like, I think that to a certain extent it kind of it helps with loneliness, like it gives you that feeling of company, you know. I also didn't mention yet how mad I am. I've been mad this whole time about your ex-husband because you said that he left you for another woman. And to me, like you seem like a very, very cordial, respectful, put together, successful woman. So to me, I'm just trying to figure out like why would he leave you for another woman? Like what happened there?
so we'll back up. And I don't want to put his business out there, but I'll tell kind of like my side of the story. Um, so we also, went through a lot of deployments, a lot of workups, which is the training period before deployments, and then um, basically the one of the reasons that he told me was, and this is before, late a few years down the road, he sent me a message and he basically apologized and took responsibility for being, young, immature, and stupid. But at the time, he said that I was gone too much. When, when I'm sitting here, I was like, what do you mean I'm gone too much? You're the one that leaves all the time. When this happened, I was TAD on temporary assignment to a schoolhouse. So so yes, I was gone, but what he told me was that basically that I was gone too much. And I'm like, I've gone through two deployments with you, countless workups, and I'm not gone very much. But that's what he told me. But um few years down the road, he sent me a message, and just apologize, and um, which was great. It was, he took responsibility, which also I mean, I was over it, so it didn't make me feel any better, but I'm sure it made him feel better. Yeah, and just, apologize for being young and stupid, and that's that's all the explanation that I have from that.
Have resentment towards him?
I think for probably a few months after he did it, it was really hard. And it kind of like takes a toll on you because, like what it what what is it that I'm missing? Like why am I not good enough? Um, but after he left me a couple of months later, he did ask me to work on things, and we did, but it just wasn't the same. So it wasn't um so it wasn't, I don't think, as horrible as if he would have just left me, because I think that would have been really difficult on me. But the fact that he came back and, he apologized and asked if we could work on things. Um, but, at that point, it's kind of over. So,
Yes, yeah, and just goes to show the power of an apology. An apology can go a very, 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 very long way in someone's life and in your own life. So it sounds to me like you've reached a point of forgiveness towards him.
oh, absolutely. Yeah. I mean, we were young. We got married. I was almost 20 and um, he was 20. Yeah, I was almost 20 and he was 20. He was almost 21. Um, we had we had no, but I'm sure that there are 19 and 20-year-olds that get married and can figure it out, but we had no business getting married. Um, you know, so it was, yeah, it was a learning curve.
How are we on time, Kat?
Oh, we're good. I don't have to be at work until 7:30.
Are
It's
you
only,
close? Are you close by?
oh yeah, I'm 15 minutes away from work. No worries.
Nice. So, what was I gonna say? I was gonna say something. Anyway, I'll move on to the next topic. So, what I know that one question you're not really supposed to ask military people is anything about like war. So, are you comfortable with talking about war?
Um, I've never I've never been to combat. Um, so I only have secondhand knowledge from friends, you know, um, significant others. So I anything you ask me, I'll only have secondhand knowledge of.
Would you? I would imagine that, if you did have to go to war, um, so let me back up a little bit. So I was a school safety officer for 10 years, and one day I was in the cafeteria in a school, and one of the I think it was in the army, but one of the recruiters were there trying to recruit the kids to join. And I was speaking to him, and he told me, "Listen, man, nobody wants to go to war. None of these soldiers, nobody wants to go to war." And is that sort of how you feel? Like, would you agree with that sentiment?
I don't think that anybody wants the aftermath of a war. But I feel like that's why we joined the Marine Corps. I mean, that's why I joined the Marine Corps. Um, because I saw things being done uh that I knew were not right. And sometimes that's the only way that you can affect change. So I don't know. I don't know, and I'm hesitant to say because I've never been put in that. Um, yeah, so I'm hesitant to say because I've never been put in that situation. Um, but I feel like that's why a lot of us joined the military, is to affect change. So I don't know that I'd agree.
That's interesting. That's a really interesting answer because I spoke to my cousin about it, who was a former Marine, and he agreed. So, that is a really interesting answer because what I'm hearing is that there's a part of you that actually wants war.
That not that wants war, but that wants change.
Right, right. and sometimes war is necessary for change. W would you say things have gotten better? You know, because you said that you originally wanted to join war because of Al Qaeda and all that. Would you say that things have gotten better over time?
I think things have gotten different. I think that we're fighting a different type of war now that doesn't necessarily make it to, to the media as, oh, we lost 2,000 service members today. I think it's different. It's a lot of the war that you don't see um, on TV, at least for the United States right now.
Right. And I don't want to go too far into politics, but what I will say though is that, you've been fighting wars your whole life. Like dealing with your mom, dealing with your divorce, dealing with moving around so much. You've been fighting for wars your whole life. So I think that if you did go to war, it'd be like, okay, just another one. Just another war that I'll conquer. You know what I'm saying?
Um, it's uh sometimes you need war for change, and these wars in my head have made me who I am, and I think a better person, right? Like when things happen, to my Marines, if they're going through things, it's that's one of the things that they say, about the military, about learning through reading books and reading through what other service members have gone through in the past wars. I feel like I can go through this. So when they need help, they don't have to actually go through it. They can kind of draw on my experiences. Um, because I'm strong enough. Like I don't like I, and this can be wrong and I would never know, but I think I'm very mentally resilient. So I'd rather go through it. So when they're having those issues, I can be like, hey, this is what I did. It worked really well. Like, let's go through it together. Um, it's kind of who I am, but not because this is just how I am. It's a lot of my mom telling me that I'm wonderful and the best thing around. And it's leaving my whole family in Colombia when I was 8 and, kind of having to be here and, learn a new language. And it's a lot of little baby resiliences that I think are really useful.
I noticed a theme so far, which is that you very often have the mentality of I will absorb pain for other people. This is like the second or third time you said it. You're very, very like thinking about other people, very altruistic, and very, very like if I have to suffer for other people, then so be it.
Huh. I haven't thought about that.
I noticed it
But
a few times because you said it about your siblings, right? You said it about your siblings w when it came to your mom's death, and you said it now when it came to the Marines. So to me, you sound like a very altruistic person who has a lot of resilience, like you said, and who just is constantly absorbing pain for other people.
maybe it's because, if I know that I can handle it, and it's not going to hurt me, as much as it's going to hurt somebody else, then why wouldn't I, you know, why wouldn't I do it and then help the people that it really would hurt? It's like I think it's like when we're hiking in the Marine Corps, if we have like, if sometimes we hike with our stuff, um, we have water jugs or ammo cans, or, we might bring some machine guns for training. Like, you're not going to give those really heavy pieces to the weakest person in your platoon or in your company. The naturally the strongest person's going to be like, oh, this is fine. because 20 pounds to me is not the same thing as 20 pounds to, you know, a 130-pound person. So it just makes sense in my head.
Yeah.
It,
Well, I'm willing to bet that your mom was probably the same way.
I I know that she was the same way, unfortunately, but I think that um she was the 130-pound person going, it's okay, I'll carry the machine gun, when she shouldn't have, when she should have been looking for others to carry the machine gun. So
It all makes sense now. I think there's a part of you, that's where you got it from, and there's maybe even a part of you that wants to be like your mom. And I'm also starting to wonder, like, are you that person who carries too much wood and who takes too much for other people?
I don't think so. I don't think so. Um, you know, there has been some at some points where I've had to be like, okay, like I'm tapped out, and I'm okay saying that because I think I have the support system. I don't think that she had the support system to be like, okay, somebody please carry this thing. Um, I have it. So I'm comfortable. I'm comfortable tapping out, you know, when I'm at my max.
That's really good because sometimes in life it's really important to tap out, like, and I think that like what I'm getting, or at least what I was getting before is like a very, very like don't ever quit mentality. A lot of Marines and a lot of military have that don't ever quit mentality, but from a psychological perspective, every now and then tapping out, I would say is okay to tap out and even necessary in life.
Oh, yeah. I think that you're right. There's a lot of it's a lot of don't quit mentality, and I think that that's how it had been for so long. The stigma of having difficulties with your mental health for a long, long time. I mean, it was like, oh, you don't go see mental health. You don't go see it's I don't know if it's a derogatory term, but they call him the wizard, the psychiatrist. Like, you don't go see the wizard, like
Who referred to him as the wizard? I never heard that.
Marines. We make words for everything. But for a long time, it was something that you just didn't do. But I think maybe the prolonged Iraq war and then Afghanistan had so many Marines really needing, you know, to go see mental health that now it's not very
Stigmatized.
stigmatized. Yeah. And unfortunately, like, you know, it's necessary. So you can't stigmatize it because you know that maybe at some point you'll need it. So you need to, you know, really provide the support to people that need it now. So we've come a long way.
Yeah, well, I mentioned this in other podcasts, but I'm going to say it again. Growing up, I'm 34 years old. You're about the same age, I know. But growing up, we were taught that therapists and psychologists are for crazy people only. Now, as of recent times, we're starting to realize, pretty much everyone needs help of some sort. We all go through things. We all have egos. We all have, mental illnesses, or we all have some sort of like, something going on up there that we need help with. And now it's a lot more, talked about, and it's a lot more socially acceptable. It's a lot less stigmatized, which is great. And a lot of people talk about how the world is a much worse place, but from a psychological perspective, the world is probably better than it's ever been. I think that the world is, like, yeah, like there are things like social media that messed up our brains, but we are more psychologically aware than we ever before. And a lot of people in the military and like just like cops and UFC, a lot of people have this like be strong, suppress emotions, and keep it moving mentality. And the truth is that, as emotions have to be processed, don't they?
Mhm. Yeah, you're right. I think that um there is a shift, and thank goodness that there is a shift, but
Yeah.
there's also awareness. Like we know what it is. You know, we're not living through the, you know, through having like the veterans of the Vietnam War come home And
Mhm.
we don't know what's happening to them. We just know that there's this crisis happening. We at least know, yes, social media, horrible, but like at least you know that if you need to self-regulate, you need to maybe, get yourself off of social media for a while, maybe limit yourself. You at least know, you know. So not you specifically,
Right, 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 right.
for
I
gigs,
didn't think it is that.
yeah, we at least know. It's I agree. I think and maybe this is like the stupid positivity, but like we really have come a long way.
Yeah, no, that's a really good point that you brought up. Even though we have, social media, and even though we have other things, pornography is skyrocketing, and even though we have all these things, at least it's talked about, and at least we know, and at least we're aware that it's hurting us, why it's hurting us. Florida just made this new rule that you have to be under like at least like I think like 14 or 16 to even use social media now. And some people think it's crazy, some people think it's not. But like you said, at least we are aware, we are psychologically aware of what it's doing to us, so we can go from there. Um, so you're a captain. So tell me, what is it like being a leader in the military? Tell me what that's like.
Being a leader in the military is like having I have no children yet, hopefully. Hope I get to have one sometime. But it's like having children that you didn't birth and that you didn't raise, but you get them. You get them and then like they're yours, Um, because everything about them, is your responsibility, right? How they manage their money, how they live, the cleanliness of their room, um, how they eat, how well they PT, how they like exercise, how well they do on their exams, if they go to off-duty education, so regular college, their growth in their Marine Corps career, their growth in their personal life, like you're responsible for that. Uh,
Interesting.
so so that's what it's like being a leader. It's like having a lot of children that don't look like you.
How many people are under you? How many Marines?
So right now I have I think it's 105.
Wow. Wow.
But the company that I'm in right now is a little bit different because it's a lot of small sections under me, and then each section has their set of people, if that makes sense. So I don't do it alone. Gosh, I would fail miserably if I did it alone. You know, I have lieutenants under me and enlisted Marines and enlisted senior leaders that
Drill
do
sergeants.
that do a fantastic job getting to know each and every single one of our Marines. But that's what it is. And it's really rewarding. Like, when they get selected for meritorious promotions or when they get selected for commissioning programs like I went through,
Uh,
it's it's so rewarding because, they're not your kids, but you know that they're going to benefit from it. It's fantastic. I love it.
Yeah, I mean, again, like I'm hearing a lot of like altruism, and you like helping them, and you like guiding them, and to me, you seem like a very, very, very compassionate person to me. So I was talking just the other day with my cousin about drill sergeants. You have drill sergeants under you?
Um, so drill instructors are the people that teach brand new Marines and brand new officers. So
Gotcha,
they're
gotcha.
called drill instructors, yeah, and then uh, sergeant instructors. They're basically drill instructors, but the same thing.
Uh,
Um, but when they're done with that tour, with that entry level tour, then they're back to their MOSs, their regular jobs. So I'm in a support battalion, which means that we have administrators, we have motor transport operators, mechanics. We have a lot of heavy equipment. Like that's the type of battalion that I'm in.
Interesting. So we were talking about drill sergeants, and we were talking about how, a lot of them are just screaming, screaming, and we were just basically talking about the screaming culture in the military. And that there is some debate, as because there are some people who are saying that's over aggressive, that's not good for the human psychology. So how do you feel about that whole screaming culture? How do you feel about that?
So I think for entry level, um, it didn't. So to me, during boot camp, it wasn't the screaming that really got to me, but I think it did get to a lot of people. I'll never forget this. When I was in boot camp, I had a recruit that used to sleep right next to me, right? Because we're in big squad bays with just bunk beds everywhere.
Put the men
Uh,
and women together?
no, no, no. Just
Oh.
it was just women, yeah. And there was one recruit that was diagonal from me. Her name was Recruit Price. I'll never forget her. And she would just stand in line and cry. That's all she did. She didn't make it, unfortunately. But I think the screaming probably got to her. So I think maybe it's good for some people and not others. I will say that out of recruit training, you don't really see screaming very often unless somebody has done something uh, very, very bad. And it will never be like recruit training, or at least that has been my experience. It's always a very stern talking to, uh, almost like you would, almost like you would your kids. Um, but yeah, I don't know. I think it didn't really bother me in boot camp. They screamed, that was their job. Um, yeah, I I don't know. I'm sorry.
No,
That's a
well,
horrible.
I think what you said before, with that you said it's good for some people, it's bad for some people. I think that's a really good answer. Some people have much thicker skin than others, and if she couldn't survive that screaming, who knows how she would do in war, or whatever the situation is. So Kat, I kind of ran out of questions. Do you have anything else to say before you
No,
leave?
thank you so much for this. I it's been a really nice experience. It's been a really good experience.
Yeah, and but before I let you go, I just want to say that, I am very, very proud of you for coming a long way and for overcoming all the challenges. I know that, boot camp was one of the easiest things that you've ever done in your life. You've had things that were much more challenging than that, and I'm also willing to bet that your mom is also proud of you too.
Oh, thank you. All
Kat,
for her.
yes, it's all for her. So we're gonna have a part two next year at some point, all right?
Please.
Have a good one, Kat. Take care.
Bye.